Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of ADM. In last episode, I discussed about overseas competitive exams, and I also mentioned that I'll be discussing those exams in detail in my coming episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing about GMAT exam and how there are overall four sections, and I'll be discussing about them in detail, their structure, and how you can proceed ahead with each of this section. So let me just share my screen. All right. So as you can see over here, GMAT, which stands for Graduate Management Admission Test. Um, I even discussed this in my previous episode that it is a computer-based adaptive test, and mainly it is taken by the students who are trying to pursue or aiming to pursue MBA in overseas countries. So there is actually one major change that was brought by the organization of GMAT. So the change was that they have introduced an online test mode also. So previously it was only offline, which you have to go to the test center and then give the exam. But as you all know that during pandemic, uh, definitely for people were not able to access remote locations, so the organization made this particular change. So there isn't much significant difference in both the modes. The only difference is somewhat in the time limit, and secondly, the fees. The fees is for the GMAT exam, which you have to take it in offline mode at test center is $275. And if you are opting for online mode, then it is $300. Now, uh, going ahead, I'll be discussing about breakdown of this exam structure. The first section that we'll be talking about is AWA, which is Analytical Writing Assessment. Now, what does this section do exactly? So, in this section, you will be writing how well reasoned the argument is, which is given to you in that question. And also, obviously, it will measure your ability to think critically and communicate your ideas. The main point I wanted to mention is that it involves one question and it only has 30 minutes of time limit. So you basically have to analyze a given argument in that particular question. You have to analyze the line of reasoning and then use the evidence of the argument. So what does that exactly mean? So you'll be given a particular question, may that it can be an article, it can be some sort of conversation, it can be even an argument like I've taken an example here. So what you need to do is you have to take some time and evaluate your response together. But of course, as you can see over here, the time limit is only 30 minutes. So you have to think quite fast during that particular process. And also, you will have to keep some time in the end so that you can reread and evaluate whatever response you have written down. So that is one main thing. Second thing I wanted to talk about is how exactly is AWA evaluated? Now, there are two things which evaluates AWA section. First one is the human rater, and second is the computer algorithm. Computer algorithm is based on some code which actually evaluates your response. Human rater is an actual human which evaluates your response. Now, in case there is a disparity between both the scores evaluated, then a third human rater is brought into the scenario. And when he evaluates your response, only then the scores are adjusted. So this is how basically AWA section actually works. But I mean, I would like to give you some tips like how you can go ahead with this particular section. The first one, which I already mentioned, is that you need to take some time and evaluate your response accordingly. Second thing you can do is you have to organize and develop your ideas. And lastly, provide relevant examples which are supporting the argument or supporting the reasons. So these kind of things are what and how you can structure down your AWA section. So the next particular section we'll be talking about is integrated reasoning. So integrated reasoning. Now, this is a quite unique section in GMAT exam. So it basically measures your ability to analyze data and your information presented in multiple formats. Now, it has 12 questions and the time limit is of 30 minutes. Now, there are four types of questions which can be asked in this section. First is graphic interpretation, second is table analysis, third is multi-source reasoning, and the fourth is two-part analysis. Now, what these sections mean? The first one that we can talk about graphics interpretation. So graphic interpretation is something that will measure your ability to study any particular graph. It can be XY graph, it can be pie chart, it can be bar graph, any sort of graph that can be involved in statistical manner. And based on this, some questions will be asked to you. The second one we can see is table analysis. The name itself suggests that some sort of information or statistics will be given in the form of tabular form. And again, based on this, some questions will be asked to you. The third one you can see is multi-source reasoning. Now, this will basically measure your ability to examine the data from multiple sources. It can be text passages, tables, graphics, or some combinations of both also. And the last one, which you can see, is two-part analysis. This section basically measures your ability to solve complex problems. Now, these can be either quantitative, it can be even verbal, it can be even mix of both. It can also involve your ability to evaluate trade-offs and solve simultaneous equations and all those kind of questions. Now, one unique thing about this particular section is that some questions may require to choose more than one answer. Now, it is possible that a given question can have two or three answers. And again, this question does not involve partial credit. So it doesn't mean that if you have chosen two right answers, whereas the actual right answers are three, then the marks will be given for those two. This won't be the case. So you need to be careful about that. And again, I'll be mentioning this again and again in each section that you have to keep a focus on your remaining time, because if you are saying here there are 12 questions in 30 minutes, you almost have 2.5 minutes per question. So you need to make sure that you're not wasting your time on one particular question a lot, because there are a lot of other questions which needs to be solved in that given time frame. So if you waste your time on one particular question, then it might be even possible that there are some other questions that may be left out. So you need to take care of this particular part. All right. So the next section that we are going to talk about is quantitative reasoning. As you can see over here, it measures your ability to analyze data and draw conclusions using your skills. Now, this particular section, it will have 31 questions and the time limit will be of 62 minutes. And there are mostly going to be two types of problem. The first one is data sufficiency. Second one is problem solving. Now, both of these categories, they require some knowledge of arithmetic, algebra, and some common basic concepts of geometry. So that you need to make sure that you are well rehearsed with. And so the problem solving question that you can see over here will be basically measuring your ability of logical reasoning and analytical reasoning. Then the data sufficiency that you can see over here will be measuring that your ability to analyze a quantitative problem and recognize which data is relevant. So you'll be given a problem that consists of a questions and two statements, and based on that, some sort of questions will be asked. Whether let's say there is a statement and there is a B statement. So you need to find a logical relationship between those two statements. Sometimes it can be a simple question also, which can just ask you about whether quantity A is greater or quantity B is greater, or otherwise it can even ask you any sort of relationship, whether the how is it, whether they are equal, or if there is any other sort of logical relationship between those two statements. All right, so the last section that we are going to talk about is the verbal reasoning. Now, trust me, इसमें बहुत students यहाँ पे अटकते हैं. So this is a very crucial section पूरे exam में का. Because sometimes what will happen is you can give your biological thinking and the stuff that you have learned earlier, through that you can somehow get out of quantitative and integrated reasoning. But verbal reasoning is something that if you are reading a question, then you have to know this. Of course it involves some logical reasoning also, but majority of the stuff you have to know about it. So naturally it measures your ability to read and understand written material and to evaluate arguments, and then to correct the written material to conform into the standard written English format. Now, this particular section involves 36 questions and the time limit is given as 65 minutes. There will be major three categories of question. The first one is reading comprehension, second is critical reasoning, and the last one is sentence correction. Reading comprehension is basically it measures your ability to read and understand a given passage, and based on that passage there will be some question which will be asked to you. Now, one thing I wanted to mention in reading comprehension is कि आपकी speed बहुत fast होनी चाहिए reading की, because the passages are long and आपकी जो skills है in terms of reading, it should be in such a manner that you just have to read it once and understand the passage completely. Otherwise, you won't have enough time to complete all the question. So I would suggest anyone who is opting for either this exam or any other exam, in verbal reasoning section, the reading comprehension, your reading speed should be very fast. And of course, your ability to understand it, not just that you should read the paragraph. So that is one thing that I wanted to point out. And the second one is critical reasoning. So what does it do is it basically measures your ability to make arguments, evaluate arguments, and then lastly to evaluate a plan of action. So that is what critical reasoning is. The third one is sentence correction. As the section name defines that it is based on a given sentence and it measures your ability to correct a sentence grammatically and to structure it in a proper manner. The second thing it can measure is that how precisely or how effectively you can express your express the relationship that is mentioned in that particular statement. Now, expressing this relationship, of course, again, grammatically as concisely, that's what the main thing is. So this was all about the GMAT exam. I told you about 4 sections. Now, if you have any other sort of doubts or any other queries related to this exam, you can always ask in the comments below. And of course, if you want to meet me personally, even that is possible. My office is located in JM Road, Shivajinagar in Pune, just above Levi showroom. And again, if you want some more information about this particular exam, you can always go to the link which I've mentioned in this particular slide, which I will also be pasting in the comment. So thanks a lot, everyone. I hope you found this video informative. And now in the next video, I'll be covering the GRE exam, in which I'll be discussing about the 3 sections involved in GRE in detail. So thanks a lot, everyone, and see you soon.